those people who cares about stuff. That sounds like an utterly ridiculous and meaningless statement. We all care about things, right? And then again, in our consumer-driven culture, the clarification that I care about physical objects in our lives marks me as one of those materialistic people. I stand in front of you to say that I am indeed materialistic. I care about stuff. Here we are, embodied beings in a physical place. Here we are, here and now, bits of stardust, surrounded by other bits of stardust. Telling our stories not just with words, but with the stuff we make and buy and inherit. Our things are a part of our story. Have you looked around, say, your kitchen lately? Really looked? Have you touched the things in it and thought about where they came from, who made them, how they arrived, where they are, there on the shelf? Those mundane things in your everyday life are full of meaning. We don't have to go far to explore the meaning in other people's mundane things, though the setting of some of those things may no longer be mundane. Half a block from here is the Bidet Museum. It is housed in a converted chapel space with a gorgeous neo-Gothic ceiling soaring overhead and state-of-the-art glass cases lining half the room. In one of those display cases, carefully placed on a small, square, white pillar, is a clay handle from an ancient Israelite storage jar. Stamped into that handle, in the imperial Aramaic letters used by the Babylonian Empire, is the name of the town of Moza. Such a small thing. A tiny, raised seal on the broken handle of a plain clay jug. Yet what a story is there. The town of Moza, you see, was the resource center for what remained of ancient Israel after the Babylonians had destroyed Jerusalem, burned the temple, stolen the Ark of the Covenant, the very throne of Yahweh itself, and deported most of the people. This jug handle dates from a time of loss and despair, from a time when the royal line of David failed and much of the nation was forcibly taken away from their promised land. It is an artifact of imperial oppression, a piece of a historical event that changed the theology of a people in unprecedented ways. This piece of pottery is a reminder of a time of fear, pain, and separation in the stories of the Hebrew Bible. An object doesn't make a story real. A story is real when it holds meaning for us, when our hearts recognize the truth in it. Yet an object like this is a reminder of the solid reality another person has lived. I see the handle on its tidy white pedestal behind that glass case, under the arch ceiling, and I know what it would feel like in my hand. I wonder how the weight of the jar would have pulled on my arms. I can let my imagination fly and see the potter at their wheel creating the jug, the Babylonian official so far from home stamping that mark upon it, the cook who made food from the jug's contents. I imagine that all of these people knew loss and fear, hope and laughter, awe and despair. I imagine that like each one of us, they felt there was little they could do to affect the tide of history. The jug handle makes me think about our lives, our artifacts. Each of us in this room is a person who owns things. When we think about the objects in our own kitchen, the labels explaining where things have come from, what stories of oppression and suffering may come to our mind. In this holiday season of consumerism, the stories of material culture told by archaeologists are a stark reminder of how even the most innocuous pieces of our lives are part of larger stories of connection or destruction. That all of us are part of these stories. Capitalism encourages us to distract ourselves from our worries about where our society is going by buying things. But the stuff we surround ourselves with is a constant reminder of the narrative of destructive empire we so wish to forget. Why do we preserve ancient artifacts? I think it is because, in part, we need to remember that these stories are real events that impacted even the storage containers in someone's kitchen. We need to care about the stuff in our lives because every object has a story. Something has died to bring us our comforts, some plant, some animal. If we buy our goods from a company who uses sweatshops in a place like Bangladesh, someone may have died. Buying as ethically as we can may not erase the effects of industrialization on our planet any more than recycling or taking public transportation will, but it helps us to live with integrity. Neither is it always easy to buy ethically. The same economic forces that bring us cheap, unethical goods keep many people in a position where they must choose between starvation and the jug marked by empire. It breaks my heart to know that buying ethically has become a privilege like health care or marriage rights. We should not back down from the pain of this. I invite you, the next time you are in your own kitchen, to pick something up and hold it in your hands. I like to do this with food, especially, to take a moment to be grateful for this piece of nourishment and all of the forces that brought it to my refrigerator. I will hold an apple in my hands and think about the hands that held it before mine. Imagine for a moment the tree on which it grew, the texture of the tree's bark, the kiss of the sun on the tree's leaves and budding fruit, the rain soaking down into the rich, dark earth to be absorbed by the tree's roots. With a local apple, I can smile and think of the farmer who harvested it, the pickup truck that brought the fruit to market, the shopkeeper that sold it to me. With our excellent compost program here in Berkeley, I can think about my apple core going back into the circle of things, going back out to be a part of our living system. I like to rest for a moment with my few pieces of hand-thrown pottery as well. All of them were purchased or given as gifts directly from the artists. I have seen the kilns where they were born through fire, the piles of hand-dug clay waiting to be formed. If one of these pieces breaks, my partner and I will carefully glue it back together and make it a display piece, like the jug handle in the museum, a physical memory of our connection to the potter, to the place in the hills of Appalachia where that container was formed. With many of the other things in my kitchen, pondering the story of each object is a painful thing to do. I hold a plastic container in my hands and wonder about the conditions in the factory where it was created, about what resources were depleted to make it part of my pantry. I wonder, if it isn't recyclable, how long it will lie in a landfill and a pile of other things that cannot decompose. I don't know who made it. I won't care enough to try and fix it if it breaks, and probably wouldn't be able to fix it if I tried. Many of the things in my kitchen were made to be disposable, uninteresting, cheap, and easily replaced. My kitchen may be full of things from all over the world, but the story they tell is not of my connection to other citizens of the globe. I don't know who gathered most of my food, or who boxed it, or who drove the semi and unloaded it at my grocery store. I don't know, and most of the time I ignore the fact that I am surrounded by reminders that I am a citizen of a vast empire controlling the lives of billions of people I will never meet. I ignore the knowledge that I am part of a huge, wasteful mess, that often I care more about my comfort and convenience than being a responsible steward of our world. The ancient Israelites left a few pieces of pottery and metal and stone. We Americans, we citizens of empire, are leaving behind giant piles of trash in our earth and in our ocean. We've even filled the atmosphere with pollutants, poisoning the very air we breathe. I wonder what a future archaeologist will have to say about the object you pick up in your kitchen, about the Tupperware container in mine. Will it be one of the artifacts from the period of capitalist despair before the Great Turning? Or a remnant of the civilization that destroyed our planet and its inhabitants beyond recognition? Will there be any future archaeologists to ponder the things we have left behind? Our kitchens, our homes, can be holy places. Any space can be sacred ground when we approach it with love and intention, when we create as well as consume. Our intention, our attention to the things around us can shape our world. What we buy, what we make, what we dispose of, says a great deal about who we are. When I went to sea a few years ago, I learned a great deal about what can legally be dumped into the ocean and what can't. Food thrown into the deep ocean will decompose, glass will break down over time, and metal will rust away eventually. Plastic, though, will drift in the ocean for thousands of years. We were very careful what we threw overboard. At one point, I accidentally threw a bit of plastic into the wrong bin, and the officer from my watch spent the next half an hour going through the trash to dig it out. That one tiny piece would not have greatly increased the amount of plastic in the ocean. But for that woman who had dedicated her life to the sea, it would have meant compromising her integrity to allow our group to be part of that problem. It was unacceptable. Unacceptable. Not acceptable. We can accept the fact that we are inevitably contributing to the destruction of our world, or we can refuse to. I remember also some of the conversations I had with other environmental advocates when I was doing that work. People who had dedicated their lives to playing the advocacy game. All of them agreed that personal lifestyle changes were never going to do enough to make any difference for the environment. Their calling was to large-scale institutional change, to working with the government and the media to change laws and policies. And yet, they found they were happier, felt more whole when they made the effort in their day-to-day lives to live as sustainably as possible. They ate organic local food when they could afford to, used public transportation, recycled, lived simply. The head of the organization I worked with biked to work every day in the DC heat and biting cold. Living with integrity in the spirit of their values helped to sustain these politically minded folk in the difficult and draining work they were doing. And so, I invite you to care about things, to care what we bring in and what we dispose of, to care where our things came from and where they go when we discard them. Let us be alive to our physical world, not to be attached to our possessions, but to notice them, in new ways. Many of us long for the real, and yet we retreat from the world into a shrink-wrapped isolation, surrounding ourselves with objects we ignore. The world is complicated, our lives complex. It is easy to get distracted. There are terrible things happening, and we are a part of them, just like the ancient Israelite Cotter and the Babylonian official. A deep look at the things around us makes that clear. I invite you to care, not to be attached, not to feel guilt, but to be alive and aware, to take delight in those things which tell stories of creativity and sustainability, and to let ourselves feel grief for the things that hold stories of devastation and oppression. I hope you can feel the pain of our world when the stamp of empire enters your home. Let us practice the art of hope and refuse to give in to despair. In keeping our aliveness, let us strive to live with integrity, to care about stuff.
Thank you.